Namaste everyone. Thank you for joining in this video. So just like one of my previous videos on the aspect of the sun through all the 12 houses, in this video, I'm going to take you through the aspect of the moon through all the 12 houses. Okay. So the moon in Vedic astrology, it represents the mother. It also represents the feminine touch in our lives. Okay. The moon rules the fourth house of the Kalpurush Kundali, and because it rules the fourth house, so it has a very important role to say in our homeland. You know, it has a very important role to play for our mother, for our vehicles, for conveyances, and for our comforts as well. Okay. So the moon's aspect on other planets and houses will show a sense of comfort and welcoming nature. Okay, and such an aspect will also create a emotional and maternal influence on whichever house or whichever planet it is aspecting. Okay, plus the moon's aspect also denotes the role of women. Okay, so whichever house the moon is aspecting, it means that the females will come from, will come into the life of the native from that house. All right. For example, if the moon is in the seventh house and it aspects the first house, so it means that a lot of the native will be associated with a lot of females. Okay, right. So if the moon is in the eighth house, it aspects the second house, and it means that the native will have a lot of female friends in the family. Okay, so anyways, we'll go through the aspect on all the houses. So let's begin. So moon in the first house. Okay, so from the first house, that means when the moon is in the ascendant, it aspects the seventh house of relationships, of marriage, of legal partnerships, of other people, of trade and business. Okay, so what this means is that the native will have a lot of female friends coming from the business circle. Okay, and because it is the first house, so the native will be very self-aware and emotional. Okay, and it will give a very, very wonderful personality to the native. Okay, if the moon is in the first house, it gives a wonderful personality, a very charming personality to the native. Okay, the mother in this placement, the mother will become a big influence in the career of the native and the physical health of the native. Okay, and these natives, they are very caring, they love giving. Okay, they love giving, and they are also good at receiving other comforts in life. Right, and because the moon is aspecting the seventh house, so it also makes them a very nurturing spouse. Okay, what happens is that these people will have a maternal attitude towards their partner. Okay, and because it is the seventh house aspect, so it also indicates that the mother of the native might take part in choosing the spouse of the native. Okay, but then there is also a downside to everything, right? So the downside of this aspect is that because it is aspecting the seventh house, so the native will have a longing for emotional attachment and stability through their partner, and if they don't get this emotional attachment and stability, the marriage can become very, very fragile. Okay, so then we have a moon in the second house, and from the second house, the moon aspects the eighth house. Okay, so what does the second house represent? It represents family, it represents wealth, it represents assets, food, and speech. So because the moon is aspecting because the moon is in the second house, so the native will have a very will have a very let's say, what to say, how to put that, the moon will have the native will have a very attractive voice. Okay, and because the second house represents food, the native will be attached to exotic foods as well. All right, and because the moon represents emotions, so this placement makes the native attached to his or her family, and gives emotional stability to the native through family support. Okay, wealth is connected to wealth is connected to the mother for moon in the second house, and the mother is the source of money, knowledge, and food for the native. Okay, and because the moon is aspecting the eighth house of occult, of secret affairs, of surgeries, of death and transformations, what it shows that the native will not like to show his female friends to the world. Okay, so he'll keep his friendship with the females a secret. All right, and because the moon also represents emotions, so it indicates that the native will be emotionally attached to learning about the secrets of others, about the secrets of the occult. Okay. And they will also be, they will also be attached to the relatives of the spouse. Okay. But the flip side to this is that, because the moon is aspecting the eighth house, so these natives, they are emotionally attached to the secrets of other families, which can actually make them prone to gossip. Okay. And because the second house is also the house of money, so the finances of the native will be fluctuating. Why? Because the moon is like an ocean wave, where where things rise and fall due to the waning and waxing phases of the moon. Okay. So as a result, the wealth can fluctuate for the native, and this may cause them to look at marriage, family life, and relatives as a source of income. Okay. And this also allows the teachings of one's family to be shared with the family of the spouse, because the second house represents your family and the eighth house represents the family of the spouse. Okay. So in this placement, the moon will always be comfortable. That means the native will always be comfortable when he or she tries to learn about the things that are that are hidden from plain view. Okay. So then comes moon in the third house. So in this position, moon aspects the ninth house. So the third house is not a very good place for the moon to be, because being the lord of the fourth house, of being the karaka of the fourth house for comfort, it goes, in the third house, it goes to the 12th from the fourth, which is about losing comfort and focusing all your efforts towards a goal. Okay. So because it is the third house of skills, of communication, of sales, so the moon or the mind of the native is geared through through acquiring the skills of art or painting or communication. Okay. The mind will always want to be, to be in writing mode, to be working with one's hands, because the third house also represents your hands, right? And these people will have an emotional attachment towards artistic pursuits, which brings peace, right? And because the seventh aspect is on the ninth house, so this, what does this ninth house represent? It represents higher learning, it represents philosophy, teachers, universities, gurus, religious rituals, and pilgrimage. Okay. So because these natives have the ability to have the art and ability to communicate, so they have the emotional need to attach higher wisdom to their work. Okay. So it does not matter if they will be, if they are writers or actors or journalists or sculptors, but what happens is, they must have some religious or philosophical meaning behind what they do. Okay. So it can give rise to sculptors who are very, very fond of sculpting the images of gods. Okay. So in other words, what we can say is that whatever the moon learns in the ninth house, whatever the moon learns in the third house, it wants to connect to the ninth house through those things. Okay. And these people, they will often use their creativity to attain wisdom. Okay. And because the moon is also representative of the mother, so through the teachings of their mother, they will be driven they will be driven towards a higher purpose. Okay. So the fourth house is the best place for the moon to be, and from the fourth house, the moon aspects the 10th house. Okay. So the moon is very, very comfortable in the fourth house, even if it is debilitated, because this is the moon's home. Okay. And there is a sense of emotional comfort when at home and with their mother. Okay. The mind is very, very peaceful, and it is always at peace when it's thinking about improving the home, the comfort, property, and people of their homeland. Okay. And from this fourth house, the moon aspects the 10th house of career, of status and reputation, right? And what it shows is that the native will be very, very emotionally attached to his or her career. Okay. And it will be highly nourishing for the native to have a career that involves taking care of others. Okay. So those careers can be in nursing, or maybe, maybe working in a old age home, or maybe providing message therapy towards massage therapy towards others. Okay. And because the moon is not only about emotions, it's also about comfort, right? It's also about the comfort and support of others. So these natives will feel that with the comfort and support of their mother and homeland, they can achieve any kind of career success. Okay. And obviously, because the moon is representative of the mother, these people will have a, they will have a great influence on their path. Okay. And these people also can become good bureaucrats. Okay. Because there is a, because the fourth house is the house of the public, so they can actually become a public servant. Okay. And think about going into politics. Okay. The moon represents the bureaucracy, that means the government on a local level. So what happens is that these people with moon in the fourth house, they have a sense of patriotism and emotional attachment to helping the people of one's homeland. Okay. So moon in the fifth house, this is again a good position for the moon to be, because the fifth house represents mantras, and the moon in the fifth house always gives a high amount of concentration powers to the native. Okay, so from the fifth house, the moon aspects the 11th house, and moon in the fifth house, it will make the native emotionally attached to children, to creativity, to academic studies. Okay, and the native will always feel a peace of mind when surrounded by children and learning from them. Okay, and they will always have an interest in political discussions, performing arts, and gambling. Right, so the fifth house is the house of intelligence. Okay, it is also the house of purva punya, so it represents intelligence gained from a previous lifetime of good work. Okay, so because the moon is also the karaka for concentration, so it can these natives can quickly grasp topics and concepts which can be very, very helpful if you are a student. Okay, so it it creates it produces some very, very involved students, right? And the 11th house is the house of network circles, large organizations, hopes and dreams, and gains. Okay, so the moon's aspect on the 11th house will show an emotional attachment of the native to children, to creativity, to performing arts and education. Okay, and these people will always create network circles to support their hopes and wishes. Okay, and there is always an emotional need to connect with a large network when pursuing creative projects or building schools for children, and pursuing academic studies. Okay, so next we come to moon in the sixth house. So in the sixth, from the sixth house, the moon will aspect the 12th house. Just a minute. Okay, so the throat becomes very, very dry. Anyways, so from the sixth house, the moon aspects the 12th house, and because again, sixth house is not a very good placement for the moon to be, because it shows emotional imbalance with the mother and with the mind. Okay, because the sixth house is the house of conflict, it is the house of competition. So the mind of the native will always be in conflict with the society, maybe their mother, maybe sixth house is also the house of pets or animals. Okay, it is also the house of the mother's siblings. So the native will always come into a conflict with these people, right? And a lot of effort will be required to maintain a good relationship with their mother. The mind is because fifth house is also the house, sixth house is also, I'm sorry, because the sixth house is also the house of service. So the mind will be emotionally attached to the needs of to the needs of pets, to the needs of underprivileged people, and maybe healing the sick, because sixth house also represents diseases. Okay, it represents immunity basically. So the mind is filled with the debts of the mother's actions and your own debt to the society. Okay, these people are these people, although they can get into conflicts very quickly, they are nurturing actually, and they want to heal people. Okay, and then if the sixth house is actually ruled by, say, Capricorn or Aquarius, the moon, the native will not be fond of small animals. But then if Saturn aspects the moon, then they would be they would be very, very fond of children. They would be very, very fond of pets. Okay, and from the sixth house, the moon, the moon aspects the 12th house of isolation, of spirituality, of moksha, of peace, of hospitals, jails, asylums, foreign lands, and so on. So, there would be an emotional need to escape from obstacles and enemies sitting in the sixth house, and go to isolated places to find emotional peace. Okay, so because the 12th house also represents the house, the places of tranquility. So these people have a tendency to, to go towards places of tranquility to find inner peace, because, they would be drained out after fighting so many battles with diseases and opposition. Okay, and they may have an inclination to live through tremendous hardships, which may make their mind inclined towards spirituality, which is represented by the by the 12th house. Okay, so next we have moon in the 7th house. So this is a double-edged sword, because the moon in the 7th house can make one a philander. It can make one have a lot of affairs with women, with females. Okay, and because the moon in the 7th house aspects the first house, it brings about emotional attachment to one's spouse, other people, or the masses. Okay, and they find emotional security and peace of mind when serving and loving their partner. Okay, so these people, they will often choose a spouse who is motherly and nurturing. Okay, the spouse will be very, very motherly and very, very nurturing. So I can vouch for that, because I have this combination, and I also have a spouse who is very, very motherly, right? So these people, they become emotionally connected with other people, and they find satisfaction in helping people find peace. Okay, so from the 7th house, the moon aspects the first house, which represents self, which represents your discretion power. which represents your personality. Okay, so because the moon always waxes and wanes, so these people, interacting with these people can make one feel that these people have multiple personalities, because just like the moon, the personality is also waxing and waning depending upon your partner. Okay, for example, if you find a partner who is very, very disciplined, then they might become very, very disciplined to complement their partner. If you find a partner who is very, very fun loving, they might become fun loving themselves to complement their partner. Okay, so these people, they are very, very easily influenced by their spouse, and they have a big dependent, they are highly dependent on their identity and health being, being nourished, right? They want their identity, they want their health to be nourished by, by public acceptance. Okay, so these people, they need a constant flow of love and support from the masses. Okay, so this can be good and bad depending on the other placements or other combinations in the chart. All right, again, moon in the 8th house, so not very good. Okay, because the 8th house of the moon is called the Maran Karakasthana. Okay, it is called MKS. So the moon, it means that the moon dies in the 8th house. Okay, but then the moon in the 8th house aspects the 2nd house. So these people, they usually have, they, although it's a very uncomfortable place for the moon to be. Okay, so many of the great minds that have come into this world, they have moon in the 8th house. Okay, and the 8th house does not mean that they have a bad relationship with their mother. Okay, the relationship with the mother can also be very, very great. All right, but then to really know what the moon will do in the 8th house, you have to observe its dispositor. You have to observe the nakshatra lord of the moon, where the nakshatra lord is placed. Okay, and the 8th house placement of the moon, it shows that the mind is inclined towards things that are hidden from plain view. Okay, that are hidden from the surface or buried underground, like the occult, mysteries of the world, mining, surgery, drilling for oil and gems. Okay, and the emotional need of these people, they come from going through many sudden transformations which impact them psychologically and physically. Okay, so what happens is that because they face so many sudden transformations, they are very interested in learning how to solve these sudden and hidden transformations. Okay, and sometimes people with these placements, they can find that their mothers have a lot of health problems. Okay, and because of these health problems, these health problems, they can become very, very emotionally draining and damaging for the native. Okay, but then these problems also allow the native to transform. Okay, and that can make them very, very matured and grow out of those problems. Okay, so these people, if the moon is badly placed, or if the moon is having some difficult aspects, then these peoples, they might dissolve themselves in drugs and sex and alcohol, and they might find themselves isolated from the world of reality. Okay, but on the better side, this placement increases intuition and psychic powers of the native. Okay, so these people have an interest in solving the problems through the occult, or or by attaining emotional mastery. Okay, so these people, this placement often gives rise to creative geniuses who try to resolve their emotional setbacks by bringing a dark side of creativity. Okay, and from the 8th house, the moon aspects the 2nd house of family. Okay, of wealth, history, culture, and food. So due to sudden events and chronic illnesses, these people have a tremendous need to be nourished by their family. Okay, so if the moon gets debilitated, if the 8th house is of Scorpio, then it can create family turmoil that is mentally and emotionally draining. Okay, so then a moon in the 9th house, it will aspect the 3rd house. Okay, so this 9th house moon will have an emotional attachment to higher learning, to philosophy and religious texts. Okay, so the peace of mind, these people will achieve peace of mind when studying the scriptures, when studying religious scriptures. Okay, and the ancient past, right? So they will love getting involved in temples, organizations related to religion, or in the pursuit of higher education, maybe in universities, right? And the mother will often become a source of guidance and knowledge in one's life. And these people are the ones who have a dominating male type, fatherly type mother figure. Okay, so the teachings of the mothers of these natives, they become the core for one's belief system. Okay, and because the moon is the karaka of the 4th house, it also shows one dealing with issues related to their homeland and comforts through education and the law. Okay, so what we can say is that in this placement of moon in the ninth house, the native will be bound to use the law and higher education in attaining comfort and land. Okay, and because from the ninth house the moon aspects the third house of siblings, of media, craft, effort, communication, and intelligence, the mind will have an emotional need to find peace through through preaching to people who are near and dear to them. Okay, they love sharing words of wisdom with your siblings, and these people are often of the opinion that higher education and religious knowledge should be shared with their friends and family and neighbors. Otherwise, there is no use in attaining such valuable information. Okay, and these natives will often have the habit of using philosophy and religious education to create arts and crafts, and the artwork by these natives would actually indicate some religious aspects within them. Okay, so this is a very good placement for the moon to be overall. All right, moon in the 10th house. So again, not a very good placement for the moon, because a watery planet in the 10th house can make you very, very shaky while trying to complete things. Okay, so it represents, moon in the 10th house represents status, rank, and misplaced government. Okay, it seeks to climb the ladder. All right, it seeks to climb the ladder to power, and these people, they have an emotional need to find themselves attached to their work, corporation, or or government position. Okay, so because the moon gets digbala in the 4th house, in the 10th house, it becomes dikshunya. Okay, that means it loses its strength, right? Why? Because the moon is a gentle and sensitive planet, and the 10th house is, it is a house where you are required to work hard. All right, so 10th house is like the jungle of the corporate world. All right, and it is ruled by Saturn, and because it is originally ruled by Saturn, so there is a lack of nourishment, right? There's a lack of nourishment, and because there is a lack of nourishment, it feels, these natives will often feel like they are homeless. Okay, so the moon, it brings fame to an individual. Okay, because the 10th house is also the house of, the house of fame, and the moon is, the moon always likes fame, right? So this position can bring fame to an individual, and this placement also shows that the mother has taken over the father's role and becomes the most visible and dominating figure in the life of the native. Okay, and because it aspects the 4th house, so there is a great emotional need for these natives to seek privacy at home and comfort from the mother due to so much pressure at work, maybe so much pressure due to so much pressure in public life and in the corporate world. Okay, but the good thing about these natives is that they can separate their public and private lives quite easily. Okay, so even if these people end up being celebrities, the media and the public would hardly get a glimpse of their person's home and their private world. All right, so but because because the 10th house is also the house of success, moon in the 10th house, it does not find its peace of mind by climbing the ladder of success. So what it does is that it tries to find peace of mind by aspecting the 4th house. Okay, by it tries to find peace of mind in the privacy of the 4th house. Okay, and the mind is always drawn towards higher ranks, right? But because the moon is the karaka for the 4th house, so the mind will always be towards the 4th house of comfort, of towards the 4th house of motherly love and care. Okay, so moon in the 11th house, this is a good placement for the moon. Okay, this is a good placement for the moon, but then these people will have an emotional need to connect with network circles and large organizations for the betterment of the world, right? And they can enjoy connecting with people. Okay, they are very, very resourceful, and they are constantly stimulated by being involved with friends, organizations, and parties. Okay, this placement of the moon gives an emotional need to be socially recognized, right? So these people often want to become world famous, but even if they are not world famous, they want to find a way to shine in their circle of friends. Okay, and moon in the 11th house can be very transformative for the native's mind and their mother. Why? Because it is the 8th from the original 4th house. Okay, so the 8th from 8 from any position calls for sudden fluctuations and transformations. So this placement is usually is usually not very good for Aries ascendant, because the moon becomes the lord of the 4th house, and the 11th house represents hopes, gains, wishes, and goals. So these people have to achieve their goals by either networking or using other people if it is in a malefic position like in the house of Saturn. Okay, and from the 11th house, the moon has an emotional need to connect with children, arts, and creativity, which is invoked by becoming social with others. Okay, so due to the influence of artistic circles, they automatically have a tendency to be creative and gained through children. Okay, so this means that the 11th house Chandra is highly impacted by its aspect on the 5th house. Okay, so finally we come to the moon in the 12th house. So from the 12th house, the moon aspects the 6th house. So these people are dreamers. Okay, they dream more than they can do. And with the moon in the 12th house, it becomes very imaginative, creative, isolated, spiritual, and eccentric. Okay, they feel withdrawn from the world as their mind is always in a spiritual realm and the realm of other worlds. All right, and they find it very, very difficult to identify with most people. These people often have a false sense of ego. All right, and that ego tells them they are special because they are isolated, but it is not the case. Okay, so these natives, they are, as I said, they are very, very disconnected with the world, including their spouse. And the moon or the mind, it creates the need to search the deepest places within to find their creativity, and usually they are successful in doing that. Okay, so this is a placement that produces authors and artists, and these places, they are these people, they are highly spiritual. And most of them are introverts, and because there is a lack of connection with their mother in the world, these people can easily go into a depression. Okay, and as I said, this is the house of dreams. So these people, they love living in their own dream. And the moon from the 12th house, from the 12th house, it aspects the house 6th house of diseases, conflicts, obstacles. Okay, and the privileged people and the people of the lower realm, that means the people who work under you like servants, right? So because the mind, because the moon in the 12th house keeps the mind isolated and separated from reality, these people have an emotional need to solve other people's conflict through imagination, through spirituality, and their ability to observe the world from a distance. Okay, so their emotional need to connect to others often attracts people who are in conflict, dealing with diseases, health ailments, or this is a placement that can produce doctors or other medical professionals, because they have a desire to heal people who are at the lowermost strata of the society. Okay, so the spouse could be a nurse, could be a healer, could be a caretaker or a doctor who has dealt with personal conflicts and enemies. Okay, and this placement of the moon in the 12th house makes the native serve the underprivileged through their spiritual and artistic work. Okay, so this is it from me in this video. We've gone through all the aspects of the moon, all the placements of the moon, and how it aspects the different houses according to that placement. So I look forward to your comments. Try to match this with your chart. If it matches, do let me know. If it does not match, still do let me know, so that I can correct and put in more predictions out there for all of you. Okay, so if you have any doubts regarding your chart, or if you want a consultation, you can always reach out to me at the number given in the description box. Right, so that's it from me in this video. I'll see you soon in another video. Namaste everyone. Om Gurave Namaha.